Hey everyone. Okay, so interim study guide, I'm gonna go over this as quick as possible. There's way too many problems for me to do all in once. So anything that I feel like we can just do in a calculator, I'm just gonna say calculator, give the answer and move it along, okay? So number one, solve the expression, choose the appropriate result. Calculator, 72 is the answer. Number two, solve the expression. It's a tech enhanced item, so I don't have the answer. So let's go for it. So calculator, negative 123 minus a negative 52. Plus 46. Next time I probably won't do this. So answer is negative 25. Okay, so you're going to calculate that, move it along. Number three, solve the expression. We're going to go ahead and calculate that. This is going to be 48 over 155. And again, if you put that in the calculator, it's going to be good to go. Number four, meteorologist was monitoring the temperature outside and wrote the expression 78 plus negative 6 minus 5. Which statement best describes? Okay, so the temperature definitely started at 78. It decreased by 6, so it's either going to be C or D, but then we have to say that it decreased again by 5, so my answer is going to be C, right? So follow that progression from a positive, went downhill or decreased, and went and decreased again, okay? Looking good so far. Number 5, okay? Choose two equivalent expressions, okay? Basically, I'm going to solve and simplify as best as possible and get my two expressions. So 11R minus 12R is negative 1R, which this was not going to make a mess for me here, okay? So that's negative 1R, right? Or negative R. So this is equivalent to this. So number 5 is A and B, clearly not positive and negative. Number 6, an expression is shown. Create an equivalent expression without parentheses, okay? So we would distribute the two, and distribute the negative sign and combine like terms and go from there, right? So I would have to combine these two x values, right? So I can do that with a calculator, okay? Number 7, expand to write an expression. Expanding means distribute. So I'm going to distribute this negative 1 over 4 to both terms on the inside and call that a day. I will do this one. Negative 1/4 times negative 8, I can put that in my calculator. On the interim, if you saw this problem, you would simply just use your calculator, right? And use Desmos calculator. So negative 1 over 4 times the quantity of negative 8. Okay, so I can do that. That's going to be a 2. So that's 2x. Okay, negative 1/4 will distribute to the 12, and that's going to be negative 12 over 4 or negative 3y. So that's going to be my final answer, 2x minus 3y. Factor to write. Okay, factoring is not on the interim. Okay, factoring is the reverse of distributive property. Okay, so if you were willing and interested to know, I need to find the greatest common factor between 36 and 16. So it can't be 16, it can't be 8, so it's going to have to be 4. So a 4 would come out, and then I'd be left with 9a minus 4. So I don't have to worry about that because factoring is not on the interim. Okay. Number 8, select the expression equivalent. Okay, so I'm going to distribute that negative sign and go from there. Number 8 is going to be a. Okay, so I'm going to have a 5.2x plus 4.8 plus 6x, right? Because the two negatives cancel, and then the negative 1 distributes to the negative 2. That's plus 2. So this is a 5.2x and a 6x, which is 11.2x, and a 4.8 plus a 2, which is positive 6.8, which is a. Okay, keep it going. Number 9, drag and drop the answer. Okay, so we don't talk about an identity property. We don't talk about that. Basically, identity property is when there's a 0 involved, when I'm adding a 0. So all I'm interested in is commutative property. Remember, commutative property is just the reversal of the letters or numbers in that sequence. So a plus b is equal to b plus a. This is commutative property. All I did was I flip-flopped. Flip-flopped the order. 3 plus 4 is equal to 4 plus 3. That is also commutative. Anything with a 0 is not commutative. Okay, that's an identity. Okay? Number 10. Which expression results from the commutative property of addition? Okay, so for number 10, I'm looking at these three numbers. And remember, commutative property is when I'm just reordering things, okay? Associative property is when I reorder or regroup with parentheses. So associative property is when I change the parentheses. Commutative property is just when I change the order of how this is written, like I flip-flop things. Your answer is going to be D here. Okay, I know it's hard to see because I had to move the camera closer. Basically, the 9, then the 8, then the negative 6. The 9, then the 8 was in behind, and the negative 6 was in between. So all I did was I reordered things, which is the commutative property. Okay. Number 11. Which of the following equations shows the commutative property of multiplication? Okay, so it's going to be B. Commutative property is when I flip-flop the numbers, but I have them equal the same thing. So B is the answer to number 11. Okay. This is 11 part B. Multiply the expression below. We're going to calculate that, right? We're going to call that a day with calculator. Okay. Number 12. Which of the following equations shows the associative property of addition? Okay, so associative is when I regroup with parentheses. So A, no parentheses. B, no parentheses. It's not even the same thing. C is one of my answers, right? Because I have a 0.75 and 1/2 in parentheses. Here, I have 1/2 and 2.1. So you can see how things are just regrouped. The parentheses just shifted to parenthesize two other things, or two different things, okay? E is the other answer. You can take a look at the parentheses. D doesn't have any parentheses, so C and E are our answers. Number 13, distributive property. 6 distributes to negative 3W, which is negative 18W. 6 also distributes to 1/3. And if you did that in your calculator or on Desmos, that's going to be plus 2. That's my answer there, okay? 14, Jenny ended a hike at an elevation of 3,000 feet above sea level. She had started at an elevation of 2,000 feet above sea level. Okay, well, she ended at 3,000. She started at 2,000. Okay, so what's the change? Well, she went up 1,000. So the answer is C, positive C, positive 1,000. Not positive C. That makes no sense. 15, moving along. Which situation is described best by the number line? Okay, well, we always start from 0, and it looks like we went left. And we went left or negative about 2.5, right? So Ryder owed his mom 2.5. That certainly looks good, okay? B Ryder, I guess his name changed, had 6.25. No, that's not what we started at. We started at 0. Ryder owed his mom 250. That's also a possibility. And D is also a possibility. But then he increases, and he increases from negative 2.5 all the way to about 6.25. So that's an increase of about 8 and change. So went back 2.5, went up 8.5. He does some chores and makes 625. Well, that may be, right? He babysits his sister and makes 875. Yes, he made 875 to get to the positive. See, this line, this top line here, is the making of $8.75. Okay, so 15 is going to be C. He didn't make 625. He ended up with 625, but he made 875 to get there. Okay. Number 16, Alejandro hiked for 2 hours in Death Valley. He started at 0 feet, which corresponds to sea level. In his first hour, he descended 52 feet. So we went from 0, and we subtracted 52 from it. At the end of the second hour, his altitude was at negative 115 feet. Okay, so we want to figure out what describes what happened between hour 2, or first hour, and the second hour. So we went from negative 52 feet to negative 115 feet. So what happened in between? He had went downhill or descended 63 feet. Okay? So if this was the positive, then we would have went uphill. But because it's still negative, we went downhill. Okay. 17. You are adding two rational numbers with different signs. How can you tell if the sum is positive, negative, or 0? Okay. Well, the sum's going to be positive when the addend, meaning the thing you add, with the greater absolute value is positive. Okay. So basically, it's like this. If you want to add or subtract two whole numbers together, or two rational numbers together, you're basically going to just make sure you add the numbers together regardless of the signs they are, but you're going to keep the sign of that other number in case we're doing the subtraction part, right? So for instance, if the sum is going to be positive when we add two numbers together and the greater absolute value is positive. Basically, it's like this. So if I have 8 plus a negative 2, well, 8 plus negative 2 is 6 because the greater absolute value, 8, is positive. The sum will be negative when the addend, or the things we add together, but the greater absolute value is negative. Let's just switch that. Negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6. 8 has a greater absolute value, so I'm going to keep that sign in part of my answer. I have to subtract, obviously. Now, all of this means nothing because you're using a calculator. B is the answer for number 17. I'm going to stop it after, I think, 18. Okay, 18. Penny solved an equation by subtracting 6 from each side of the equation and dividing each side by 5. Okay, so she's going to subtract 6 from both sides. Okay, so that means it had to have been a plus 6, so B isn't going to work. Okay? And D isn't going to work because it's not even 6. And then dividing each side by 5. Okay, well, I wouldn't be dividing by 5. I'd be multiplying by 5 over 1 on A, so my answer has to be C. Okay. 19, Luke's baseball team went to an amusement park at the end of the season. The cost for admission of 5 coaches and 12 players was $407.50. The admission cost for each coach was $27.50. What was the admission cost for each player? Okay, so 5 coaches and 12 players was $407.50. The admission cost for each coach was $27.50. So I know C is $27.50. So I'm going to do 5 times $27.50 plus 12p equals $407.50. Right. So I'm going to have to multiply 5 coaches times $27.50 each, which is $137.5 plus 12p, and that's going to equal $407.5. I'm going to subtract 137.5 on both sides. I'm going to have 12p is going to equal 407.5 minus 137.5. It's going to be 270. Divide by 12 on both sides. I'm going to get $22.50. Okay, so each player was $22.50. Okay, which expression is equivalent? This is one that you guys got a lot wrong on one of the tests. This is a negative one that has to distribute to both terms. It's got to. So now I have 7x minus 5 minus 3x plus 2. Okay, got to be really careful with that minus sign. So I've got a 7x and a negative 3x, which is 4x. A negative 5 and a positive 2, which is negative 3. So my answer is 4x minus 3. My answer is D. Okay, last one. I'm going to stop the video for a minute. Which expression is equivalent? Okay, so I've got a 3k and a positive 2k. That's 5k. 5L plus 6L is 11L. So my answer is going to be B. Right? I'm going to pause the video, and we'll come back in a minute.